Hello everyone, friends. Yuri Trifonov is in touch, and today we are talking about the mechanism of formation of particles from, actually, out of nothing. It was as if a kind wizard had come, waved a magic wand, and a particle was formed from the absolute emptiness. By itself, the mechanism of particle formation from absolute vacuum, or, for simplicity, from absolute emptiness, is not fully described. It has no unambiguous confirmation and has not been fully worked out. He still has various white spots and, as it is now fashionable to say, bottlenecks. But the appearance or formation of particles from some empty space is still fixed. This was observed during work on the collider and is called the birth of pairs. Using the mechanism of formation in a competent way, we can make literally any matter and literally out of nothing, if we just have energy. But we have already said the word energy. We have already said a lot of interesting things. They have already said absolute emptiness. They even remembered about the collider. Now let's try to figure out what exactly is going on step by step. I want to say right away that I will try to convey the material in a simple way, so there will be various abbreviations and simplifications. In general, we will focus on the general meaning of the appropriate processes. As such, there is no absolute void in physics. Here it would be worth referring to the early moments of the universe's life, which, by the way, are also somewhere at the level of a hypothesis. It will not be possible to test all this empirically, but according to the theory, something happened at some point. And here is actually a very interesting intersection of physics and philosophy, and even to some extent theology, because this process appears at the junction of understandings of different sciences. But we are still analyzing physics, and, based on the technical presentation of the issue, there was simply no absolute vacuum. This is where ideas about the existence of fields come into play. The fields can be the most incredible. As far as I remember, according to string theory, there are at least about 15 different types of fields, and each one is responsible for something. Naturally, since we do not fully understand what each field is, we cannot say whether it exists in this case in some place or not. It is very useful to associate with fields familiar to us on Earth. For example, an electromagnetic field. Its effect can be detected by the effect on the inserted probe. And if something affects the inserted probe, we say that there is some field here. At the same time, the field continues to be a special kind of matter. By the way, there was a separate video about the fields on the channel. I'll leave a link. There we found out that physics does not fully understand what a field is at all. And it is precisely because of this misunderstanding that various white spots appear. These white spots then result in the most incredible theories and raise many different most interesting questions. And then the most interesting thing is that matter just doesn't appear anywhere. We work with the law of conservation. And, by the way, the law of conservation of energy works in all forms physics. This is probably one of the fundamental laws that no one disputes. The law of conservation of energy works both in kinematics or mechanics and in all variants of quantum physics. And that's where he shows himself at his best. It turns out that this field, which is present in absolute emptiness, which is not really emptiness, begins to interact with energy. This is if you greatly simplify the process. I'll even put it even simpler. Now I will not be able to formulate this Talmud of information, which is usually described in popular science publications, and I certainly will not retell more serious publications. Therefore, let's simplify it. In the end, it turns out that there was some field. He began to be pumped with energy, and as a result of pumping energy, this field turned into a material particle. In fact, it really looks like a New Year's tale. In fact, the processes do look fantastic, but I think it will be interesting to know that they have been tested experimentally. The experiments at the collider, which I mentioned at the very beginning. There was such an interesting phenomenon as the birth of couples. What is the birth of couples? This is the appearance of a pair of particles and antiparticles during interaction. When excess energy appears, some locations generate matter. The process of the birth of couples is really recorded, described, and there is a lot of different information about it, which is easy to find. Well, it would not be superfluous to mention here that you and I have that most magnificent Einstein pattern, where E equals mc2. What is all this for? To some extent, we can say that matter is energy, but energy is matter. With the proper level of processing of this entire process, it turns out that matter is easily converted into energy. How does it work the other way around? With this transformation, there are probably no more questions. They learned to turn energy into matter a long time ago. In general, this can be observed anywhere, with some assumptions. We fry kebabs, Take coal, take firewood, take anything. We begin to burn. We turn matter into energy through the right process. But there are a lot of questions about the appearance of matter from energy. It is very difficult to imagine it speculatively. So that's the whole point of what we're talking about right now. It's just a way of such a transformation. And if you remember, the topic sounded like the mechanism of the transformation of energy into matter, or the mechanism of the appearance of particles from nowhere, and I also said that as such the mechanism is not fully described. But we know the most important thing. In order for matter to appear out of nothing, we need to saturate this nothing with energy. Further, the mechanism looks something like this. There were some different quantum fields in this nothing, and these quantum fields had some interesting properties. When interacting with energy, they began to give birth to a variety of particles. We can burn firewood and get energy, and now imagine that the energy stored in the battery can be generated in real-life matter. The field receives energy and begins to create particles from its own structure, and this is confirmed by the confusion and the number of particles. During the study, the particles divide more and more, and the whole process of detecting different variants from the zoo of particles begins. Particles have already been found in such an incredible amount that it is even scary, and it seems that if there is energy, they can appear from the field. It seems quite logical. The number of variations is almost limitless, and new ones are regularly found. In fact, this once again confirms that a particle is energy or its form. There are also various virtual particles or calculated particles that are needed in order for there to be some balance. And when we analyze all this, we realize that there must be a boundary somewhere. We must either find the smallest particle from which we will start, or we must say that we do not quite understand the nature of matter correctly. I think that based on these experiments, which we have just talked about, it all boils down to the fact that the nature of matter in our country is slightly different from what we would like to see. Unfortunately, it is very difficult, or even almost impossible, to test all this in practice. You can collect information bit by bit. For example, the fact of the appearance of particles in the collider is generally fixed and can be used as a scientific fact. This is on the one hand, and on the other hand, no one has seen the particles anyway, and it is impossible to observe them directly. They are observed by various indirect methods. For example, by the track in the Wilson chamber or by the effect on any other objects. As a rule, some mathematical model of such a particle is obtained first, and then it is observed. Even if we assume that there is some kind of field that interacts with the energy that we transmit, this transmission mechanism is not clear. There is an interesting effect, which consists in the formation of particles of different types when exposed to strong electromagnetic fields. The electromagnetic field affects the vacuum so strongly that it literally tears it apart. And from this electromagnetic torn field, a variety of particles also begin to appear, which we, in general, expect to find. Well, that's probably it. I hope that we have sorted out the issue with you, or at least were able to uncover difficult points that you had not thought about before. Subscribe to the Telegram channel of the project. The largest number of updates are coming out there now. Well, watch other videos on the channel. I will be glad to see you again. See you soon. I will be glad to see you again. See you soon.